Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gangana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Hello, welcome. These teachings are from a work assigned to Adi Sankaracharya, which is called Aparokshanabuthi, or self-realization, or direct perception of the self, of the Atman. And it is an introduction to Vedanta. It speaks about Raja Yoga with a Vedantic vision. So listen very carefully to these teachings, reflect upon them, then meditate upon these teachings so that they can bear fruit in your heart. May you all find freedom. Moving on, despite we have already read this verse in the previous video, I will resume from the verse 89, because it is all in the subject of Prarabdha Karma, so let us remind this passage. O enlightened one, pass your time always contemplating on Atman, while you are experiencing all results of Prarabdha. For it ill becomes you to feel distressed. So here, like mentioned previously, O enlightened one, pass your time always contemplating on the Atman. Well, if it is an enlightened one, this is what he will be doing, because only Atman exists for this one. So contemplating the Atman has a different meaning from it appears to be. It's not a person contemplating the Atman. It is just Atman itself. So, while you are experiencing the results of Prarabdha, so like I mentioned previously, Prarabdha is the karma that is responsible for the birth of this body so that it can reap the fruits of previous actions. So, this karma that brings forth this body, which is responsible for it, always also brings forth with it the experiences that this body will undergo. So all other karmas are burned into the fire of meditation. But Prarabdha karma has to be lived till the end. But the karma is always for the body, not for the self, not for the Atman, only for the body. So contemplating the Atman, this is the nature of the enlightened one, while you are experiencing the results of Prarabdha, while the body is experiencing the results of Prarabdha and going through whatever experiences it needs to go through. For it ill becomes of you to feel distressed. Because if you feel distressed, then, well, you're not contemplating the Atman, you're not an enlightened one. But feeling distressed is an inner experience. Appearances always are accordingly to the experience itself. I will not go much deeper into this, but appearances are illusory, and sometimes people observe the enlightened one and say that he is going through this and that, and it is just their projection. That's not really what's going on to the one who is enlightened. The theory one hears of from scripture that Prarabdha does not lose its hold upon one even after the origination of knowledge of Atman is now being refuted. So, the theory, the scriptural theory, one hears that Prarabdha doesn't lose its hold, it's being refuted. What does this mean? What does this mean? So this theory was brought forth to, like all spiritual teachings, underlining this, like all spiritual teachings, they are for the ignorant alone. So the theory that Prarabdha doesn't lose its hold, even after realization, is for the ignorant one, that sometimes, because of its own illusion, considers that the enlightened one is not enlightened at all, because first it is confusing the enlightened one for the body that he is observing, but assesses that he is not enlightened because he is experiencing this suffering and that experience and that experience. So first mistake is that the enlightened one is that body and he isn't, and that the enlightened one, if he has dissolved all karmas, so there's no more experience for that enlightened one, and he confuses this for the body. So this is explained so that the ignorant one understands that one thing has nothing to do with the other. So it is explained that Prarabdha continues until it exhausts itself for that body, which he is identifying with the enlightened one. And now this is being refuted on the same assumption. So it is true. Both are true, but they just come from different standpoints. For from the standpoint of the ignorant one, which is observing the enlightened one, for him it is true that Prarabdha continues even after realization. But from the standpoint of the enlightened one, Prarabdha ceases after realization, because he realizes he is not the body. He is the self, he is Brahman. So for him, there is no karma. Nothing is there. Those experiences do not pertain to him. They pertain to that body, but it is all illusion, because there is only Brahman. After the origination of the knowledge of reality, Prarabdha verily ceases to exist, inasmuch as the body and the like become non-existent, just as a dream does not exist in the waking. So, again, differentiating, because the first concept that karma remains after realization is for the ignorant one to understand that the actions that he observes in the enlightened one, they pertain to the body, and that will continue until those karmas are extinguished. But from the standpoint of the realized one, after the origination of the knowledge of reality, after self-realization, Prarabdha verily ceases to exist, inasmuch as the body and the like become non-existent. So, after realization of Brahman, the dream disappears, okay? Just as a dream does not exist in the waking. So the dream disappears. The dream body, the world, the dream world, everything disappears. Only Brahman is seen as the self. So all this disappears. And if this prarabdha is of the body, is of the dream, so where is it? Where can it be recognized? Just as a dream does not exist in the waking. So when there is the waking, the dream disappears. And in the same way, when there is realization, prarabdha disappears, just as a dream disappears when there is waking. That karma which is done in a previous life is known as prarabdha, which with respect to this life, which it has brought forth. But such a prarabdha does not exist. For a man of knowledge, he has no other birth. So, that karma which is done in the previous life is known as prarabdha, more or less, because all karmas are done in the previous life, but not all are prarabdha, because you have endless karmas there. Prarabdha is the karmas which were done in a previous life that are concerned to this specific life, to that specific body, and to the experiences that you will undergo through it. But such a prarabdha does not exist for the men of knowledge, for the men who have realized its own self, because the body and the dream has disappeared altogether. Because for a man of knowledge, he has no other birth. So for the man of knowledge, he is only Brahman. He has never had any births, nor deaths, nor will he have in the future, and so didn't he ever had in the past. Just as the body in a dream is superimposed and therefore illusory, so is also this body. How could there be any birth of the superimposed body, and in absence of birth of the body, where is the room for that prarabdha at all? So, just as a body in a dream is superimposed, well, you know that if you believe that this in the waking state, this is your body, you experience when you go into a dream, that there is a new body. It's not the same body, and it is superimposed as you. You take it, but it's put upon you, and you take it as yourself in the dream, but it's not the same as in waking. So it is a superimposed body in your identity. And in a dream, there is the body, and the body has not undergo any 6 months, 9 months of pregnancy and all of that. It just appeared. So how could there be any birth of the superimposed body? It just appeared. And in the absence of birth of the body, where is the room for that prarabdha at all? Because that prarabdha comes from the standpoint of the birth of the body, of the origin of the body. So for the illusory body, where is any birth? Where is any cause of it? There isn't. It is just illusion. The Vedanta texts declare ignorance to be verily the material cause of the phenomenal world, just as earth is of a jar. That ignorance being destroyed, where can the universe subside? So again, in the example of the rope and the snake is not made of any material but ignorance, but illusion. So the Vedanta texts declare ignorance to be the very cause of the material, of the phenomenal world, not the elements, not thoughts, but ignorance as the cause of the phenomenal world. And that ignorance being destroyed by self-realization, by the realization of Atman, where can the universe subside? If it was only the material cause, it disappears. So how can there be any prarabdha if the world disappears and the body disappears? Because they were made out of ignorance alone. Just as a person out of confusion perceives only the snake leaving aside the rope, so does an ignorant person see only the phenomenal world without knowing the reality. So just a person out of confusion perceives only the snake leaving aside the rope. So the ignorant person just sees that snake aside the rope, doesn't see the rope. So does an ignorant person see only the phenomenal world without knowing the reality, and makes confusions out of it, wrong assumptions. The real nature of the rope being known, the appearance of the snake no longer persists. So the substractum being known, the phenomenal world disappears completely. This is easy to understand. So when there is this confusion of the snake and the rope, and eventually the rope is seen, is recognized, the vision of the snake disappears. It's not possible to see it anymore. In the same way, the substractum being known, Brahman being known, ignorance disappears. And with it, the phenomenal world disappears completely. The body also being within the phenomenal world, and therefore unreal, how can prarabdha exist? What is the prarabdha of the dream body? Can you point the prarabdha of a dream body? You won't even waste time with it. You could, but you won't, because you don't take the body of the dream as real. So you don't even do that exercise. It is therefore for the understanding of the ignorant alone that the Shruti speaks of prarabdha. Certainly. Because, well, as you appear into the world and you disappear into the dream world, and when you awake from the dream world, the body you had in the dream and the world where that body was, they disappeared both together. So you're waking from the dream to the waking. Everything disappears. That body and that world disappears altogether. And when you go to it, it appears, the body and the dream. And then they disappear altogether. It is the same. So in the same way, you wouldn't waste time attributing prarabdha to the body of the dream. And for the knower of truth, the body of waking is as real as the body of the dream. So it is for the understanding of the ignorant alone that the Shruti speaks of prarabdha, so that confusion may be dispersed and faith into the enlightened one and the scriptures becomes possible. And all the actions of a man perishes when he realizes that Atman, which is both the higher and the lower. Here the clear use of the plural by the Shruti is to negate prarabdha as well. So all actions of a man perishes when he realizes that Atman, because he knows there's only Atman alone, and for actions to be possible, there must be differentiation. And if it pertains to something, is to the body. But if there's no phenomenal world, if there's no distinctions, if there are no different objects, so how can there be actions? You realize the Atman, which is both higher and lower, which is the ultimate reality, and the phenomenal world is just Atman. Just Atman. And this is not conveying reality to the phenomenal world. It is just showing its illusory existence. If the ignorant still arbitrarily maintains this, they will not only involve themselves in two absurdities, but will also run the risk of foregoing the Vedantic conclusion. So one should accept those Shrutis alone from which proceeds true knowledge. So this means if you take prarabdha as remaining after realization, it means you are foregoing the Vedantic conclusion that there's only oneness. You're assuming that two are possible. And this goes against this Vedantic conclusion. And not that Vedantic conclusion is sensitive about that matter. It's because it speaks about ultimate reality. And going against it is just embracing illusion. Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.